Hi, I'm Deborah.
And I'm Lawrence, and I'm actually wearing a different outfit today instead of my robe.
Yes. So recently we were reminded of something that's pretty shocking. The second most common cause of death in teenagers is suicide. The first leading cause is accidents. So that includes car accidents, I
Yeah.
would assume home accidents, stuff like that. So now, by the way, this doesn't mean that children younger than teenagers do not attempt suicide and commit suicide. They do. It's just that it happens to be that the numbers we're talking about adolescents. Um, so that kind of leads to the question, why don't parents talk to their children about suicide? We talk to them about safe driving. We talk to them about sex, which is definitely embarrassing. So why can't they discuss suicide? I think there are multiple reasons. One is that suicide, I think, is like the ultimate taboo. When these things change over time, people used to whisper when they talked about cancer, like it was something shameful. But so suicide is like one of the number one taboos. But that doesn't mean it's not a problem,
It's
obviously.
a huge
It's a
problem.
huge problem. About 165 uh, teenagers commit suicide every day successfully, and there are many more attempts. So this is not something. I mean, I think a big part of the problem is that adults not talking about it. So obviously, even one suicide by a child, and I'm just going to use the
Too
term
many.
child because I think of anyone under the age of 25 as a child.
Thanks.
But I mean, these are young people who are counting on their parents to help them navigate from childhood through young adulthood. And the parents are either it doesn't occur to them to talk about suicide, or they're reluctant to, in the same way they're probably reluctant to talk about sex, but knew that they had to, hopefully. Or they're afraid that if they talk about it, it's going to put the idea in their child's head. Now, let's attack that third. It's not going to put the idea in your child's head if you talk to them about suicide. There's a series on Netflix, 13 Reasons Why,
Oh,
about
God.
suicide. There's suicide, trust me, suicide is everywhere in culture, and kids do talk about it. And so this is not going to put their idea in their head where all of a sudden, I mean, as you said, why don't you
Yeah.
talk about your experience?
I mean, I definitely, there have been points in my life where I've had suicidal thoughts. And, I think that my mother, in fact, talking to me about this openly because she cares was beneficial and not harmful to me. I mean, I was already thinking of suicide, and so being asked about that and speaking about that didn't make me want to do it anymore. And when I wasn't suicidal and she inquired about it, I didn't get suicidal at that point. I felt relieved that she was asking about it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is there are so many things that our kids don't want to talk about with us. And I think I've been pretty careful about trying to honor that your privacy as much as possible. But there are certain things that, yeah, maybe you're afraid to talk to them, but you have to talk to them. This is not just me asking you about who you're dating. Okay, this is crucial. This is life or death. So you are not going to put the idea in their head. So you can look up studies. We'll put a link to a couple of them, but there have been studies and surveys done, they've concluded that it does not put the idea in the person's head. It's either there or it's not. So, for instance, Lawrence and I both have depression. I never had suicidal thoughts. For some people, it's just an aspect of their depression, and some people it isn't. The other thing to be aware of is that even if your child is not depressed, there are certain medications that can cause suicidal thoughts on their own. So anticonvulsants, for instance. There are a bunch of, the Accutane was one that caused suicidal thoughts. You would be amazed if you look at the label of even, so some antidepressants do, but even medications that have absolutely nothing to do with a psychiatric condition can cause suicidal thoughts. So this is something to be aware of. Even if your child hasn't been depressed, it's still something you need to be aware of. And if your child is taking any medication, you have to check the side effects. So
Yeah, like it is a matter of life and death, literally.
Yeah. I mean, you would try to be aware of medication that had as a side effect cardiac problems. So how do you talk to your child about suicide? Well, one thing is, do not dance around it. Do not use euphemisms. There's no reason to. So in other words, don't say, have you been thinking of harming yourself? Well, they could think that you meant self-harm, which is cutting and, other behaviors like that. There's no problem with saying, if you have suicidal thoughts at any point, please feel free to come to me. So I'm saying, for instance, if they are not clearly depressed, if they haven't been diagnosed with depression, don't assume that you'll know when they become depressed if they do, especially during the pandemic. There are so many more people, not just children, but people who are depressed. So this is very crucial. So it's one of those things where, again, like as though you're talking about wearing your seatbelt, not texting while driving, that type of thing. It's a safety, it's a public health issue. So in the same way that you would say, by the way, let's talk about texting and driving, or wearing your seatbelt, or talking to your friends while you're driving. You just sit down and say, hey, the suicide is, like the second cause of death for people your age. So I want to talk about the fact that, you should feel comfortable coming to me if you have suicidal thoughts. You shouldn't be ashamed of them. You should know that I will not freak out. Okay, and in other words, then you can't freak out if they come to you. So if you said, I'm not going to freak out, they come to you and you're like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, you can't do that. If they answer in the affirmative that they have had suicidal thoughts, okay, something very crucial is this kind of like a hypothetical? I think I used to use that term with you. Is this hypothetical? Is this just kind of are these just kind of vague thoughts that you don't have any control over?
Or do you have a plan?
Or do you have a plan? If they have a plan, you take away anything that's in the house that they could use to kill themselves. Has to be locked up, put away, brought to someone else's house, whatever. One of the big problems is accessibility. So, children until they're about 25, especially males, their frontal lobe hasn't developed and their impulse control is not as good as that of an adult. So you need to bear that in mind, that you do not want them to act on impulse and have the ability to act on impulse. There are problems like, what are you going to do with all the kitchen knives and stuff like that? Hey, find some other way to cut things, okay? And then you immediately call a psychiatrist. If they don't have a psychiatrist, you find a psychiatrist, preferably a child psychiatrist if possible, and make an appointment. Tell them that's an emergency, that the child is suicidal. Let's also bear in mind there are good psychiatrists and not so good psychiatrists. So you need to be really clear with the psychiatrist that you need to know ASAP, psychiatrist and or therapist, ASAP if your child is suicidal. So, and you need to be kept up to date because there's a possibility they'll talk to the psychiatrist more than they'll talk to you. So that is the point at which, if they have any kind of concrete plan, then you're going into what's it called? Red alert mode. There's absolutely no question about that. You have to take it seriously. In the same way, if you saw someone who was drunk getting into a car and about to drive, you would spring into action, presumably.
Hopefully.
So, this is something that I think the important thing also is to be pragmatic about it and matter of fact about it. I think that's something we talked about. Same thing when you talk to them about sex. Don't be all embarrassed. I mean, I don't want to tell you how to talk to your child about sex, but let's just say, if you're all embarrassed and act like it's something shameful, then that attitude comes across. If you're matter of fact about it, then the shame is taken away. It's just another fact of life for some people. It is what it is. And then they won't feel like their thoughts are shameful. If they think their thoughts are shameful, they're not going to want to talk to you about them. The other thing to be aware of is that children do not want to worry their parents. This is something we've heard over and over and over.
I can attest to this.
Yeah, children are like, my mom's really stressed at work. I don't want to make her worry about something else. I don't want her to have to worry about me. I don't want her to be disappointed in me. I don't want my father to be, to be upset all the time. Make it clear to them that it doesn't matter. There is nothing they could say that is worse than you finding that they had committed suicide. That is absolutely the worst possible thing that could happen, and everything else pales besides that. Okay, so let them know there is nothing they can say to you that is going to make you disappointed in them. Yeah, sure, of course you're going to be concerned. You're their parent, but it's right that it's much better by far that they're open with you, and that you can handle it together than them keeping it in.
Yeah, because you know what, I'm not saying that I definitely can't say with certainty that, oh, just because you talk to somebody doesn't mean it's going to ultimately prevent it, but it definitely is a good step and something you should do.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many...
Not to be pessimistic about it, but...
Yeah. Is it a guarantee that if you talk to them, they will not attempt or commit suicide? No, it's not a guarantee. No. But the thing is by keeping that line of communication open, you're giving them the ability to talk to you. If they feel that this is turning more dire, like if they're going from where it's hypothetical to where they're starting to create a plan, for them to know to come to you and say, okay, it's getting worse. Then, for instance, I used to, and also you need to take the initiative. So I used to say to you every, I don't know, once a month or so, something like that, every few weeks. So are you still suicidal? Are you still having suicidal thoughts? Okay, if he said yes, I'd say, I'd ask him, do you have a plan? Hypothetical stage, or do you have a plan? Teenagers especially are difficult to talk to. They tend to be very private. And, as you said to me sometimes, if I'd ask about your relationships, you'd say that's none of your business or something, or that's my business. So this is... and
it is, unless you think they're in danger.
Yes. That's the thing, is there's a difference between, hey, who are you dating now? Or are you still dating so-and-so, to, is your life possibly in danger? Okay, yeah. So this is something that
there's a difference.
Yeah, there's a difference. So in other words, difference. Yeah, I mean, so make sure they know that there's nothing they can say that will shock or worry you as much as you worrying about whether they're suicidal or not and not knowing. That you are pragmatic about it, and that you ask them on a regular basis about their level of suicidal thoughts. They may have none, they may have some that are, but it's just hypothetical, or they may actually have a plan. So you need to know what that level is. And that's, I think we got to the point where we were very comfortable talking about it. Yeah. Right?
It's definitely good to reach that point.
Yeah.
Just because open communication is much better than not knowing what the hell is going on.
Yeah, and I think except for like one occasion that you reminded me of, most of the time I was just like, okay,
Yeah.
I mean, it was I didn't freak out about it, And I mean, I didn't freak out like, you know, like he probably couldn't tell when I was freaked out about it, which was a lot of the time. But
She didn't start screaming or yelling.
no, I just was very matter of fact about it. So
It's good to be that way.
Yeah,
Things
I mean,
like
again,
that.
this could be uncomfortable. It's something that you may tell them not to talk to anyone else about it. Bad idea. It's not something to be ashamed of, and if you tell them not to talk to anyone about it, you're basically saying this is something to be ashamed of. It's not something to be ashamed of. The problem has been people not talking about it. That is what has caused many of these kids to feel like they have nowhere to turn. So talk about it and just don't attach any stigma to it. And who cares what other people think? Really, who cares? I mean, don't think about, oh my God, what if other people find out? They're going to think I'm a terrible parent, and who gives a crap? Okay, the important thing is that your child
child's life.
survives. The important thing is that your child gets through this and survives. Who cares? I mean, there are always going to be people who don't agree with how you parent. It's not important. It's completely unimportant. What's important is your child and your relationship with them and your communication with them and keeping them alive. If you have any questions or about this, please post them in the comments, and we'll do our best. We'll point you to either resources, or if you want to know more about any of the experiences that we've had with this, then we're happy to talk about it.
In any case, if you enjoyed this video, you can leave a like, and like she said, if you have any comments or questions, leave them in the comments. And if you'd like to see more, subscribe. In any case, we hope that you have a nice day.
Take care.